wing. And for that, you're going to use this calf tail.
Can you use a stacker?
I've got one here, yeah. Everybody should have a stacker.
Guys have stackers, gear stackers?
Yeah, they're in the kit.
Oh, good.
So you're going to take a piece of,
Break it in. Break it in.
when you're picking the, this is calf tail. A lot of times you'll see a reference to what they call kip tail. But kip is just, it's a common term to denote a small animal. So you're not looking for an animal named a kip. It's just, and I always thought when I first saw that, oh, now where do I find a kip? Whose farm do I go for a kip? When you're cutting the hair off of anything, cut all the way down close to the skin, to the hide. Don't just take a piece and cut it off, because that just ruins everything. And then you end up with a piece of fur that's not worthy of the name. So you want a piece about the size of a pencil, a half a pencil, really. Now, I'm not going to stack this, okay? And you want your wing to be the length of the hook shank. So we measure that. That's good. And now you're going to use a pinch wrap. And pinch that on and crank that down pretty good so it stays on top. Now bring your thread forward in front and build a thread dam to hold those fibers up. There they go. Now, what's really nice about this fly is the visibility. We're going to cut these fibers on the bias. Just put that junk there. Now what you're going to do is you're going to divide that wing into two, that clump into two. And you can be as fussy as you want, and then you figure eight it. So that they're separated. And then you loop around to stand them up. Easier said than done. Like that. Now bring your thread. So when you trim those fibers off on the back of the hook, you want to trim it on a bias so that when you come back with your thread, it's like a ramp, it tapering to the back. And that helps keep things proportionate and smooth. Okay, now the next item of this work here is that we're going to put on a tail. And for that, you can use moose body hair, you can use bucktail, you can use elk hair, any of those. You want a stiff hair on the back for that tail. And this we're going to stack. I'm looking for straight pieces here. You want to make this a little bit bulky because the tail on this fly, because one of the purposes of this fly design is to have it float. So if you've got a nice bushy tail, you know, and you got your dry fly on it or your frog's fanny or whatever, it really helps. Fishing in fast rippled water is this fly is very effective. It's buoyant. It doesn't resemble any fly in nature, but the fish don't seem to care. And affinity rainbows seem to go for the bright red and the green. So we're going to stack that.
Come in.
I was waiting for that. There's always one.
So you put
Hey, Vern!
chips in first?
Always, yeah.
Chips in first.
Always, yeah. And the tail's going to be roughly the length of the shank of the hook.
We have about 10 or 12 fibers.
15, maybe 16. I don't know. I don't think it matters a number. You just want to make sure that you got enough to pop it up on the back end here. Okay, so we've got that on, and that looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit on the bulky side. I'm gonna cut a couple of those off. You can always trim them out, no big deal. Trim off the butts. Oh. Fingers don't work.
24.
Is that a fly?
I think so. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I still need some more. As Davey McPhail would say, cut off the waist. You ever watch his videos? Davey McPhail, the Scottish guy? You have a hard time understanding him?
Didn't feel it.
Okay, now, the next thing we're going to do here is put on peacock herl. So we take about 3 fibers of peacock herl. And get them even. On peacock herl, it's always beneficial to cut the ends off because they get a little brittle and shaggy. So you get those the same length. And we're going to lay that in. Now this is where, and you bring that thread all the way to the back where your last tie-in point was on the tail. Okay, so you got everything lined up, always at that same anchor point. You can twist this a little bit. Now, in tying the Royal Coachman, and some people used to tie this, they would tie just the peacock herl, then they would add red right in the middle with red floss or thread or whatever, and then they would tie the peacock herl again. We're not going to do that, as I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to just twist these a little bit to get them together. And we're going to make a wrap here. Now I'm going to bring this forward and make another hump here. Well, that's one in the back isn't big enough. I'm going to do that again. There. And you make your second hump behind the wing. I screwed up Should have brought that thread forward first. Now that doesn't look like much now, but the finishing touch will be putting the red thread in the middle. Bring your thread to the back of the eye. Now we're going to use a Coachman Brown dry fly hackle. You've got a hackle gauge, and the hackle neck is sitting there. So pick out one that looks like a size 12 and measure it. And then prep your hackle. A lot of people don't take the time when prepping a hackle. I don't know how well you can see that.
No, get your hands out of the way. No, get your
Over,
back
over,
hands out.
there you go, right over the black shirt.
Over the black shirt.
There you go.
See that? All right, you see how this is all even on both sides? What we're going to do is we're going to trim that a little bit so that it looks like a comb on both sides, and then strip the hackle up a little bit so that when you tie that hackle in and start to wrap it, can you see that? See what that looks like? Okay, so we'll tie that in. Two turns in back, two turns in front. That was 3. And now you're going to wrap your hackle. And you want your shiny side forward. You want to make this bushy. About 3 turns there. 3 turns in front. Easier said than done. Arthritis is working today. Tie that down. Remember, when you're cutting off your hackle after you're finished, it's always good to get in the habit of holding it up or off to the side, never hanging down. Because when you hang it down, you will cut your thread, guaranteed. Maybe not the first time, but over the course of your tying experiences, you'll end up learning new dirty words. And you know, you've been there, done that. Okay, you tie off the head, and we're going to whip finish this. Wow, this is a big one, but that's good. My fingers aren't working this morning, so I'm not going to bother with that whip finish there. I'm just going to have hitch this on. Okay, now the final act, the coup de grace, the great denouement. You take your red thread, you come back to your fly, and you lay it down over the peacock herl. trim off the waste. And you wrap the red middle section of the body. I don't like this. I can't use it. I don't know why it is with this. I can't. For whatever reason, I can't use these whip finishers here. I don't know why. It's different than the one I have at home, and my fingers just don't work this well. So I'll just do a couple half hitches on the back there.
One of our participants can give you a class on it.
Yeah, I know it. Well, you know, I haven't been tying in a couple years, other than here. I've got 10,000 flies at my house.
Is that all?
It's, give or take.